Whoa, bravo, bravo. If that doesn't get your energy going for today, I don't know what will. And particularly watching Paula with finger puppets dancing through it all is fabulous. Just wonderful. Welcome to the Chicago Flute Club and our Fluting with the Stars series. And boy, do we have a star, a bright shining star for you today in so many ways. We are delighted to have our conversations with Paula Robison set up. I'm going to do a few little housekeeping things now, and before I formally introduce Paula, I would just like to go over the rules of the road here. I can hear some paper um, shuffling and things, so it's very important during these events if you always remain on mute. So if everybody can just make sure their mute button is on, and we may have some opportunity. We have so much to cover here this afternoon, and it's just going to be a free-for-all. But in the chat line, if you have any issues or problems, you can put those questions there. And then also, if you have any questions for Paula, I will say we kind of have a bit of a format that we're fitting things into. So if your question works, with a topic that we're working on, we'll try to address it at that moment, but we'll also try to save some time at the end where we can maybe have some more open question time with Paula. So without further ado now, I'm going to share my screen again because I actually would like, before I formally introduce Paula, I would like Paula to introduce herself, but it's her younger version of herself, basically giving you a little hint as why she's in this wacky, crazy artistic world and why this stop, look, and listen. And you'll see when you see this charming video. All right, I'm back to sharing my screen. And the next one.
Paula Robison, flutist.
My first studies, the piano was a really dismal failure. I just wasn't cut out to play the piano, and it made me think later that the gods had something else in store for me. They were just waiting around till I got that flute in my hands, and boy, the minute that happened, I knew that was really it for me. I wanted to be a flutist. I wanted to have a life in music, and I wanted to play that beautiful instrument that I loved so much immediately.
So what better way than for the Paula I think you were in Spoleto, Italy at the festival there, to introduce what a charming life that you've chosen to dedicate yourself to. I'm Beth Sennett, and I'm the program chair for the Chicago Flute Club, and once again we welcome you to Conversations with Paula. Paula, what does it feel like to see something like that from so long ago, and the current artist that you are now, and what you've come through at that point?
Well, I have not watched that video, to tell you the truth, for an awfully long time, and seeing it just brought back so much, and especially not only hair color and flat stomach and all those kinds of wonderful things. But the great artistry of Samuel Sanders, who was my buddy during all of those years. We met at the Juilliard School. We started playing together, and every recital I gave, and I was giving a lot of them at that time because that was my big. That was the joy. The thing that gave me the most joy and the thing that was not done very often in those days by flutists. I was out to prove that a flute recital could be something really interesting and inspiring, and people would say, no, flute recital, what a horrible thought. And actually, probably most of the flute recitals at that time were pretty boring, but I just wanted to shake things up a little bit, and Sam was he was by my side the whole time. And he was so funny about things like the Carmen variations, because I still have my music with his markings in it and all sorts of funny remarks he would put in the margin and all his fingerings, and I just have kept that part because it reminds me so much of those wonderful days just beginning. And Beth, I had no idea what was going to happen. I just thought I would just go blasting ahead and give it a try. And there was so much wonderful music that I wasn't hearing, flute music that I really wanted to get out there. And so it kind of started like that. And then there was this wonderful organization called Young Concert Artists, which was just starting. Susan Wadsworth was starting this organization at that very time. So she called me up one day and said, do you want to play a recital? I'm starting a series. And it was in a coffee shop in Greenwich Village.
Oh my gosh.
A restaurant. Harut was a friend of hers, and he had a restaurant on Waverly Place in the village. And so she just got a bunch of young artists together, and then she gave us this recital, and she put a platform on the stage, and when people went home for the evening, she cleared the place for the evening. She's really a wonderful, bossy person. She cleared the whole place and put a platform in there, and had sort of improvised some curtains. And then I was about to go on stage with Sam. The piano was on the platform, and I said, but Susan, there aren't any steps to get up to the platform. How am I supposed to get up there? Because I was wearing this wonderful long dress that I had bought I think it's my first long dress that I ever had for a concert. And she said, I don't know. And so, Harut, what are we going to do? And he said, just a minute. And he went in the back and he got some cartons full of canned anchovies. And they were big, so he put them up, he piled them up. And so I had to lift my pink dress up and walk up the cartons of canned anchovies to get to the stage.
Oh, now where is the photo of that?
Yeah, people didn't take photos in those days like they do now.
No, they don't. And I mean, what an amazing story. And just a warning to all of our wonderful guests who are here. We could go on for 10 hours with these fabulous stories. So hang on to your hat. It's going to be a blast. Can you take us just a little bit further back then? And because I think it's fascinating. I'm not sure, how many people other than those close students to you and your close colleagues know, that one, you were born in Tennessee. You were born in Nashville, Tennessee, but you were really raised out in LA. And you were very, in a very artistic family, and many of whom are here today. But you had writers and musicians and dancers, and you were kind of surrounded in this lovely atmosphere of creativity. And I think dance kind of had your heart, and a little like you were talking about piano, but then at 12, the flute captured it. We heard this. Then can you tell us the story about where you thought you would go to college, where you started in college, and then how you ended up at Juilliard?
Oh my, let me see if I can put that in a nutshell here. I was born in Nashville, Tennessee, because my parents wanted to go down there. They were very active in the beginnings of the civil rights movement. And Fisk University, which is an African-American university, attracted at that time, because there was segregation, some of the very best and brightest of the young black minds of the country. And they had a very strong music department. So my father went to teach in the music department, and I was born while they were there. And it was an amazing atmosphere to be born into which to be born, because all these great black faces looking at this little baby, and they were all doing wonderful things in music. And so I really feel that I was imprinted at that young age with this kind of part of our American culture. And when I was about almost 2, we moved to Los Angeles because our father by that time wanted to be, he didn't want to teach music anymore. He wanted to be a screenwriter or a playwright. And so they moved out to Los Angeles, and where Deborah was born then next, and then Joshua, and we were all became Angelinos. And there was at that time, so this would have been the 1940s, before anybody here was born probably, and there was a great musical culture in Los Angeles, because a lot of people who had fled the Nazis in Europe, found themselves in Los Angeles. Arnold Schoenberg, people, around in his circle, a lot of composers. So it was a really wonderful and exciting musical atmosphere there. And as I said, the piano was a dismal failure for me, just too big and too many notes. And and at that time, California had a marvelous school music program. So there I was in junior high school. I wanted to play an instrument, and a friend of ours had an battered up old flute, and there was a great beginning winds class in North Hollywood Junior High School, as it was called then. Both Deborah and Joshua were at that school, and I picked up that flute, and that was it. I just knew that was my voice. And I just didn't know, Beth and everybody. At that point, first of all, there were no women, very few women in orchestras, and there were very few flutists who were soloists. And besides, the orchestral tradition has been always such a great one in the United States that I really wanted to be part of it. So that's where I set my sights. I think originally with the flute. I was learning all the etudes, all the excerpts. I had my old modern flutist book, I think it was, with all the Strauss excerpts in it, and I practiced them all the time. So much so that a neighbor said, "Stop!" He trained his radio towards our house. He said, and our father went over there to say, "But she's practicing," and he said, "Well, that flute gets awful boring, So.
Oh my goodness. I thought it was fascinating though when you told me that your sights you were going to just go to the LA City College, and then it was through this Idlewild program that recognized, and you then ended up at USC at the beginning.
Yeah, because my parents, because of their political activities, were both blacklisted, all our parents. We had no money, and I was supposed to go, be a flutist. So, I found out that there was this wonderful program at Los Angeles City College with a lot of the composers and musicians, and I thought, okay, I'm a woman of the people, so I'm going to go to City College. And so I enrolled and everything, and then I went to Idlewild School of Music of the Arts, and the Arts as it was known then. It's grown so much since then, but it was then just a small summer camp for musicians. And two of the faculty members at USC heard me play, and they said, "Listen, Paula, we have a really good music program. You've got to come, and we'll get you a scholarship." So they did. Hal Cadill, his name, was a trumpet player, and his wife was a bass player. And so they helped me. They kind of sponsored me by going to the administration of the school. And it was just, to me, City College would have been great. Also intellectually, it would have been really interesting. But USC has a great school of music. And at that time, it was also, this is 1959, I guess, a very known in the whole country, because there were very few separate schools of music in universities at that time. But USC was one of them, and Roger Stevens, who was in the LA Philharmonic, was the teacher there, and he was a marvelous teacher, very strict, and he was just what I needed at that point. I had been studying with Arthur Hoberman, who was a beautiful player, schooled in the French tradition. And then Roger Stevens was kind of the next step for me, because he said, you have to play better. You can't just get along with playing a melody well. You have to really play your arpeggios and scales. And so he taught me that. And then and there was a wonderful symphonic band there. And I had a wonderful boyfriend. Oh, it was great. I loved my days at USC.
Well, I would love for you to continue then as we get to New York and maybe the little introduction of how you end up with Julius Baker, and then years later finding the note that he wrote to your parents that had never been shared with anyone, because it's a quote that is so incredible. I'm not going to spoil it, but so you share the story. I'll share the quote if you don't, but if you're too humble.
Well, it was Yeah, USC was wonderful, and I was very happy there. And Julius Baker came to play with the Bach aria group. He was on a tour with a Bach aria group in Los Angeles, and he played a performance. And I'm trying to remember now who made. Oh, Mitchell Lurie, the great clarinetist, who taught the woodwind repertoire class at USC. He was a good friend of Julius Baker, so he arranged an audition. He said that told me I had to play for him, so I did in our living room in Studio City in our house. And meanwhile, I have to just say in parentheses that both my siblings were very active. Joshua was mostly, I guess, at that point, he was a cellist and also a gymnast, a champion gymnast. And Deborah was a wonderful dancer and choreographer. So both of my siblings were kind of in this very rich mix of our family. So my life there was really happy. You know, I really wanted to stay. But then Julius Baker said, "You're coming to New York. You're studying with me." And I started to cry. Immediately I started to cry. Oh, you mean I have to? And then I thought the muse touched my forehead, said, "Yep, Paula, you got to get yourself together, and you've got to get yourself to New York, because that's the next place." It is now. It's kind of the center. I mean, Chicago's a vibrant center, and Boston's another center, and but New York is kind of like the place that you have to go to prove yourself in a way, and the type of study that was available there was absolutely extraordinary. Juilliard was still up on Claremont Avenue, hadn't moved to Lincoln Center yet. But then I went and auditioned, and in those days I just went in the fall and auditioned because Julius Baker had said I was coming. Those were the days when, I'm sure you've all heard these stories where orchestras, Leonard Bernstein said to Julius Baker, "I want you to be my first flutist in the New York Philharmonic," and he became the first flutist. And this happened so many times in orchestras. There weren't the type of nightmarish audition situations that there are now. It was because it was an old boy network, and they all, got their friends in and everything. That's why it was so extraordinary when Dorio Anthony won the first flute job in Boston. I remember, I'll never forget, I was standing in our driveway of our house in Studio City, and I heard this announcement, and I thought, the world has changed. Here is my role model now. This is a woman who, by her playing, has won this position. It was just so extraordinary to me, very inspiring. So I'm sorry, I'm digressing, I know.
Oh, no, not.
Who's the thread?
Not at all. And actually, I'm just trying to get back onto my regular screen here. All of a sudden, it freaked out on me. But as you were mentioning this, and I'm going to say the quote because I know you're probably too humble to say it, but you found years later a letter that Julius Baker had written to your parents that said, "Now I know how Jascha Heifetz's teacher must have felt. She is flawless." And that was something that I find in this sort of theme that we developed for today for all of your creativity and this family that you came from, that it was this important thing that they did not share with you, that your parents, I think, had a wisdom of not sharing that with you. And Julius Baker had some sort of wisdom that it wasn't to be shared with you at the time. And how you really left into this place you didn't necessarily want to go because you were perfectly happy, as you said. So can you go into then what that led to was this interesting time in New York where you also secretly took some lessons with Moïse. And Marianne, I think we have a photo of this.
Oh, yeah. So Moïse. My teacher.
Look at that photo. Oh, my goodness. Just wonderful.
He was younger than I am right now. That's amazing.
Oh. Well, you're far better preserved.
Old. I don't smoke a pipe. Maybe that's the reason he was always smoking his pipe. Yeah. But it's really funny that what you said about Julius Baker and that I didn't know about that he had felt that way about me. He used to show me off. He showed me off for William Kincaid and stuff, but he was so mean to me. I mean, he used to make me feel like junk all the time. That was his kind of way of with students. He would say, "Oh, so-and-so had such a great lesson. He played so beautifully," to make you feel really bad about yourself so that you would work harder. That was his way. So I just got used to that, and it made me work really hard. So I guess he accomplished what he wanted to. But there was something about, okay, so let's say Roger Stevens was all about the instrument, playing the instrument. Then Julius Baker, but he still had a very poetic side that he didn't show a whole lot, but it came through in his teaching, Roger Stevens, and in his playing. Then Julius Baker was such a total master of his instrument that when his teaching was based on playing better than anybody else, playing everything perfect with a beautiful sound, which is what he did. I mean, he was just extraordinary. He could play anything perfectly. And the sound was so gorgeous. I would ask him, how do you do that? And he would just say, oh, don't ask me all those questions. Use your imagination. So I would just listen, and I would convince him to play duets with me, which he did. And then I would learn from that. But I was still thinking, there's something else that I'm looking for here. I think it's wonderful to play like that, but in a way, the only way you can play like that is if you don't move too much. If you stay basically in the same place, trot out your territory, make your sound, play the music. But I want to get out there and take some chances. I want to get on a trapeze. I want to grab onto the bar and fly out there and see if I can jump and have someone else catch me. That's what I was thinking. I want to take those chances. And then Samuel Barron, bless his heart, wonderful flutist, was kind of taking me under his wing a little bit. And I used to go over there and we played duets, and he would play recordings for me. And one day he played Marcel Moïse playing the Carnival of Venice. I don't know how many of you who are listening here have ever heard that recording. I mean, this recording, Robert Dick laughs at this recording. He says, it's so out of tune, it's horrible, it sounds terrible. Well, yes, there are a lot of things that he played out of tune because he just went for it. He wasn't playing it safe all the time, Moïse. He just went for it. And this Carnival of Venice, my mouth just hung open. And Sam was smiling, and I just said, who is this man? And he's the man I was supposed to study with, but he left Paris, and he's the one whose etudes I've been playing because Arthur Hoberman told me to play them, except I thought he was dead. I didn't know he was alive. You mean this is somebody I can maybe study with? And then I had a friend whose name was Peggy at Juilliard, and she said she was studying with him in secret. She was going up to Vermont. She said he's alive and he's well and he's living in Vermont. So,
Oh my gosh.
Okay, I know Julius Baker is going to throw me out of his class if he knows I'm doing this. And I'm sure he knew, but we never talked about it. And I just started. It turns out that Moïse was coming down to New York every other week, driving his Chevrolet like this. You drive like this, smoking the pipe. You come down with his wife Celine, and they stayed at his daughter's place in Washington Heights. And he used to give lessons in a little stiflingly hot room where one after another of us would come and sit and listen to each other's lessons. And how can I say this? I can't remember who arranged the first lesson with him. Who was doing it in those days? I don't remember. He had people who were around him who were helping him. And they gave me the address, and I'll never forget emerging from the subway. It was in Washington Heights, and walking down the street to his daughter's house. And I went in there. She showed me in. She was wonderful, Marguerite. And she showed me into the room where he was sitting. It was a very small room. And there he was, puffing on his pipe. And I came into the room, and I stood there. And he continued to puff on his pipe. He did not greet me. And I stood there, which it seemed like an eternity. And finally, he rose from his pipe. He looked at me, he said, I saw you on the television. That was right after I played with Bernstein with the Carnival of the Animals. Were you nervous? And I was trying to be very, no, I wasn't. I wasn't nervous, no. He said, because I thought your playing was a little bit cold. And I thought, this man is going to teach me what I need to know. He's going to make my playing hot. That's what I want.
Oh, well, this is a perfect introduction.
Day with Marcel Moïse.
What a fabulous story. And much to our guest's treat, if Mariana, you can let me share the screen now. We have two recordings to share with you, and I'm just pulling my screen up here. We have
May I interrupt? May I interrupt just to say that Peggy just said thank you for telling the story and telling about it. She must be here. Peggy Schechter must be here.
Oh, how funny.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, what we have here, I need to get to here now. We have the original recording of you playing this with Bernstein, and this is just the audio. So now we will follow it with, so you were approximately 20 years old then, I think.
I was 20.
And that's the recording, and that's the one that Moise saw? Was that the one, the performance?
He said it was a beat cold that came in one take, that I did in one take.
One take. Now, at around 20 years later, around age 40, I believe you said, we have, get it up here, and this. Oh, sorry. Oh my goodness.
That's all right. That's enough.
Okay. But the speed and agility of that was astounding. Oh my goodness. Just amazing.
You can hear the difference between the first one, which was everything in place, almost, because, I was not quite with everybody sometimes, but it was a live thing. And this one where I was just willing to take the chances and just go for it and be a bird, even though also it was not totally perfect. But at least the idea of the birds flying around in the air was better transmitted, I thought, by the second performance.
And what really leaps off the stage is you leaping off the stage. Your whole body is playing this. And so what you were just telling us about Julius Baker and being very still and very right, the music just lives through you like that. And that's a really terrific example.
I want to interrupt you if you don't mind, just to say that's something that as we talk, I think is really important, that the music lives through us. That if it's not for us, the music is just dots on a page. It's up to us to make the music alive in the room. And so that is our responsibility. If we've been given the gift of music, it's our responsibility to develop it and send it out to make the world a better place, or at least to acknowledge what a wonderful place the world is and to celebrate that with music. And we can all do that, whether we're prize winners or not, or whether we play in an orchestra, or whether we play recitals or chamber music. Every time we pick up our instruments, the music lives through us. So that's something I've always considered to be very important. I didn't think, it's about me, I'm a star, I'm a great star, me. No, it was about the music, that I just wanted to be a transmitter of things from the past, or the present, or right now. Being written right now or improvised at the moment. That's what I've always wanted to do. So,
well, and as we've gathered all of these things together for today, everyone will be treated to exactly what you just said, which is they'll see at every stage of your life, every stage of your life personally as well as musically, you're constantly stretching and moving and taking chances right up to recent performances. I mean, you are fully performing even today, and you continue to evolve, but it's always full of this energy that you give. And I know that we just spoke a little bit about Moise. I would love to show the clip of you playing with Rampal. Is that something that would be useful for you to continue to engage in this? How you were looking and listening from all these people and absorbing, but then becoming your very own Paula that was so unique and recognized very young. People recognized that you had something very different from others. So if you would like, I would love to share that. Okay, Let me pull this up and we'll jump to the next one. Okay, I hope I'm on the right one. Hold on. Yeah, I think this is it.
To hear Paula Robison at her best, Listen to her playing with Jean-Pierre Rampal.
He's always been a great hero for me. I've always admired him tremendously, and so playing with him is just, I adore it. It's so much fun, first of all. It is like a conversation. Our sounds are different. We speak different languages. I want to play this as beautifully as it's ever been played. I want the beauty of this to be, I want people to be moved by this phrase, or I want them to be happy or excited by it. I want people to say, oh, that's terrific.
And then I want to skip ahead a little bit to when you're performing and he is conducting, just to give a little bit of this taste of this extraordinary time with him.
And left her to play.
It's just so enchanting to see you two work together, as you said, with different languages, but you found this way of communicating that was true, to both of you.
Yeah, that was a wonderful experience. I don't know, maybe some people remember this in New York. He used to give every year a 3-concert series at Carnegie Hall. The place was packed. And because he had such a devoted following, he was an extraordinary artist, just unique. What he was able to do, not only playing his instrument, but engaging the audience, and his joie de vivre was just everywhere. And so he invited me to play this joint recital with him, and then we also made a recording together. So I learned so much just from playing with him, and it was so kind of him to do that, to feature me like that with him at Carnegie. It was just wonderful. Every moment I treasured working with him.
Well, it's again, your life touches in so many different directions, and we'll continue to go through this, because if there's something that really jumps out, it's that you're such a collaborator. You work with so many different kinds of artists and so many different kinds of musicians, and you just have this ability to absorb whatever is around you and then translate it in a different way. I would be remiss, though, I know you don't want to spend too much time glorifying your past, but you touched upon it a little bit on your introduction. And it was about, being a woman at that time. And, what has struck me in my conversations with you and preparing for this is that even when you ran into obstacles, and whether you even considered them obstacles or they were clearly obstacles, you just sort of took a different direction and then just said, well, okay, then I'm going to do this instead. And the story of you competing in Munich and winning it, but they would not give the first prize to an American woman. They told you this.
They didn't tell me this. I'm sorry. They didn't tell me this. I only found it out many, many years later, like many other things. And because I chose all through these years that if I encountered any, it's quite different now, because we are really facing up to a lot of things about our past in many ways, our national history, our conduct, racial conduct, our conduct with women, and we're in a time of reckoning now, really. So the dialogues are quite different now. But this was, in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, when I was kind of in my peak from my salad days, I encountered very often a type of, I didn't want to think of myself as a woman player. I thought of myself as an artist. And so if I encountered little things, this doesn't feel quite right. If I'm a woman, okay, well, that's just too bad. I'm a woman. I'm glad I'm a woman. I enjoy being a girl. I enjoy dressing up in dresses for concerts. That's what that was part of what I've always enjoyed doing. I guess because of my dance training, I always thought of myself as a dancer. If a woman is a ballerina, of course men are ballerinas now, you see everything's different. But then, or a soprano. So let's say she's singing Aida. So usually men don't sing Aida. A woman will sing it. So Maria Callas didn't have any men competing with her for the role of Norma, for instance, you know. But if you're an instrumentalist, you are a multi-sexual person because you're playing all kinds of music, which may have a feminine side or masculine side or powerful or feminine cadences or what. We are asexual in a way, but profoundly sexual at the same time. So I was kind of navigating all these different ways of thinking as I was trying to play the flute as a soloist and an interpreter of many different kinds of music and commissioning pieces. So, and I was a competitor. I enjoyed being in competitions. I feel competitions, if you don't like them, you shouldn't do them because they're not fair. They're based on taste and they're based very often, politics comes into it. When I went to Munich, I won Geneva the competition first prize. That was not a question, but 2 years before, I went to the Munich competition, and Michel Dubost and I were up there in the last, we were finalists. And all of a sudden, at the very end, he and I were great friends. We were standing there waiting for the results, and it took hours and hours and hours and hours. We were standing there joking, you know. And finally, the judges came out and said, "We are not giving any first prize. We are giving 2 second prizes." And Michelle and I just looked at each other. We were both really annoyed. You know, well, why not give 2 first prizes, which is what they should have done. And what I, as a judge, years later insisted on at Kobe, that to the 2 young players, I won't tell their names right now, but anyway, who were jockeying for that first one, they said they wanted to give 2 second prizes. I said, no, 2 first prizes. That's what we should have gotten. So anyway, I went home with my second prize, highest prize we called it. And I thought, okay, I'm going to Geneva next, you know. But they gave me a box sonata to play in a darling little theater. Meanwhile, Michel played the Iberic Concerto with the Radio Symphony. And I'm thinking, well, there's something. And it wasn't until maybe 20 years later that I heard from one of the judges there that I had actually, by the international system, gotten the points to be the first prize winner. And Rampal was on the jury, and it was just like, no way were they going to do that. No one said that to me. But I understood the politics. There's no way they could have done that at that time, that they felt they could have done it. Because to do it would have been really an outlandish thing. That's how it was then. It just was that way. And so that's how it was. So I went back to Geneva and I won the first prize. But you know, competitions, again, it's not a judge of artistry comes into it to a certain extent. But in the end, it's a combination of the taste of the jury and politics. That's how it is.
And such an important thing for you to reiterate to all the younger players out there right now, which is what the competitions did for you, which was to elevate your playing by the preparation and all of the work that went into being there. Yes, it's wonderful to win them and you want to win them, but so it's a wonderful element to your spirit again, that you're able to keep that balance without it overwhelming you.
Still, no manager would take me. I came back having won the first prize in Geneva. No manager would take me. Yeah, no.
And yet, right, and you were not...
No concerts, sorry.
You were not just the first woman flutist to win the Geneva competition. You were the first American instrumentalist, period, to ever win the Geneva competition. You were the first American, according...
First American flutist. First American flutist. Yeah.
Oh, okay. There's so many articles that keep reiterating that you were the first American to have won it.
Well, it's possible. I never looked it up, actually. It's possible because it was 1964.
Yeah.
In the competition, so it's possible. No,
right. I probably read it in about 6 or 7 different places because I knew, I wasn't sure if it just meant the first flutist or the first American flutist, but, and you weren't just the first female flutist, you were just the first. Many charts say you're the first American to have won the Geneva competition, but regardless, it's just such a wonderful spirit that you have for what you took these to do for your life. As we think now into the next, maybe leap forward into your collaborative life. You've spoken a little bit about your collaborations, with all these wonderful pianists. You had Ruth Laredo and you had several. You had Samuel and you had Yves, Jean-Yves. Yes.
Jean-Yves Thibaudet,
Yeah.
Yefim Bronfman, and Rudolf Serkin. I mean, I just played with some Mieczysław Horszowski, this wonderful man who we played together when he was probably in his 90s. So I've learned so much from each one of them.
Well, what I'd love to share right now, if you wouldn't mind, because I think it's probably one of your finest collaborations, and that would be, can I share Mariana? Mariana, thank you, is with your husband.
Yes.
And so I'm going to, let me see if I can find my next, why is this here? Hold on, let me get this. So what we have here is with Scott Nickrenz, probably the finest violist that we have.
The rambunctious young god Pan broke off a reed and fashioned it into a flute and passed it down to Paula Robison, who plays that ancient instrument so merrily and well today. David Culhane has prepared a story about her. Let us be grateful to Pan for making Paula possible.
A man and a woman play a Mozart duet for flute and viola. They are husband and wife making beautiful music together.
It's so lovely to see. I mean, and not only do you make beautiful music together, and we'll talk a little bit later this afternoon about your life and your family life and the balance of that. But you two went on to create one of the great trios, the Orpheus trios, and the recordings that you collaborated on in that, and kind of also leading into your interest in producing and directing things. So you've got a list of organizations. You were one of the founding artists, members of the Chamber Music Society of Lincoln Center. You co-directed for the Spoleto Noontime concerts in Italy, South Carolina, and I think even in Australia, if not at least at all three locations. You directed your own Alice Tully Hall series called Paula and Friends, and Mariana's got a really cute picture of the Orpheus trio there on the left. And I think this is probably Paula. I think this might be with you doing the Takemitsu's premiere.
Yes.
So you went into this. If you want to speak a little bit about all of these, maybe about what it's like to direct these series and put on these chamber music series. There's the other one that you did for 30 years in the Temple of Dendur at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Just extraordinary longevity in these that you created.
Oh, there's so many, so many stories. Let's see. Yeah, the Orpheus Trio was marvelous because we got in a car. Those of you who've done, there's something that was called community concerts in those days. We used to get in a station wagon, load the harp up, no seat belts, drive through endless tracts of the United States, and we saw so much of our country. We were just stunned by its beauty and size, and all the little audiences all around we played for, and we really learned a lot, and we learned how to play with each other, because husband and wife teams, I mean, that has a special type of vibe. You have to learn how to get along with each other. We always used to laugh about in that very Mozart duo, because Scott is a very big soloistic player, and I would say, Scott, you remember how the Mozart goes? It goes like this, wah! Because he would always play so loud that I never could hear my own part. But we loved playing together, and we played with Heidi. You can see her in the picture, Heidi Lewalder, and marvelous harpist. And yeah, you're right. I think it was from those times together that we started to think about creating concerts. And Scott was a great presenter. He started his training as a country fiddler. So he was the director of chamber music at BAM in Brooklyn, the Brooklyn Academy of Music, and he brought players from all over the country in the mountains, Appalachians, and Canada to come together and play together traditional music. And he ran the concert series there, and I think it kind of evolved so that Charles Wadsworth, this most extraordinary man who was the founder of the Chamber Music Society of Lincoln Center, who, by the way, had the guts to invite me to join. I was the only woman in the group, although I didn't take any notice of it at the time. He asked us, when Lincoln Center became so huge that he couldn't manage his job as the director of chamber music at the Spoleto Festival in Italy, he asked Scott and me to become the co-directors of that series. And so that was a huge leap for us because we were working together. We had a baby daughter, and we were packed up and we went to Spoleto. We had been players there before, but having to run a series, speaking in Italian, only part English, but mostly in Italian, me, because Scott was translating for Scott all the time, and running in Italy, those of you who have been there know that anything can happen, and daily life is like theater in Italy. It's kind of like, what can you make happen that's going to make other people angry or make people really happy? And there's so much theater and drama going on. But when you're trying to arrange a concert that starts at 12 o'clock every day, those kinds of things can become really a big challenge. But we learned how to do it. And our times in Spoleto, we treasure them. I'm sitting here in a room that's filled with Spoleto posters because my life in Spoleto is so precious to me that I always want to sort of feel like I'm there still, even though we don't direct the concerts anymore. But so that was over almost a 30-year period too. And somewhere along in there, my manager, by that time I had a manager, she wanted me to give my old series in New York. And so I started doing a three concert series every year in Tully Hall, which had been recently built. And then I moved on to doing the grand experiment of concerts in the Temple of Dendur at the Metropolitan Museum. And for that, I thank the woman who was the director then, Hildy Lemongen, who was the most amazing thinker and imaginative woman. She did all the concerts and lectures at the Metropolitan Museum. And she said, I want you to play. I said, I want to play Vivaldi, all the concertos for all the instruments, the big concertos, 20 people playing at once, because Vivaldi's concertos are written to be played in a space with echo. Because if you play them in a regular concert hall, you don't get all the jokes. If you play them in a place that has echo, which he wrote them for, you hear somebody going, and there's the chord, and the chord stays. And then somebody else does something else against the chord. And the whole point of the music is just brought out in the power of it. And so she said, well, what about the Temple of Dendur? This huge Egyptian temple in the Metropolitan Museum. What? What do you mean? That's insane. And she said, well, yeah, sure, it's insane. So is the music of Vivaldi, and so are you. Let's just go ahead and do it. And we did. For like 20 years, we did concerts in there, and with all sorts of the great New York musicians. Just Kenneth Cooper was our harpsichordist, and then John Gibbons played. Fred Hand, I think you have a picture of him playing guitar with me. John Feeney, the bass player. Calvin Wiersma. I just can't even begin to mention them all, because Michael Cannon, the cellist, we had a kind of a band that we would play these Vivaldi concertos, they were like country music in a lot of in ways, because he was taking music from the Campagna in Italy. He was taking the sound of bagpipes, the sound of shepherds playing, like in the Four Seasons, the hunters coming home and bragging about their exploits, everybody getting drunk and falling down and snoring. All of that is in the music. It was fabulous. I'm grateful for every moment we had there. And the audiences, we sold out that place. It was just filled with people. But it was a dream, and the dream came true. And I'm really grateful. We all have to dream. Right now, no one's playing concerts in the Temple of Dendur. No one's playing concerts that like we knew then anywhere. And so now is the time for us to start doing a new way. And that means small amounts of people together. And that's what everybody's doing. And I'm watching this because I'm not doing it anymore. I'm seeing this is great. because it's a communication between people which is more intimate. We used to play chamber music. The Chamber Music Society would go to the Kennedy Center, and we would play a Telemann Trio Sonata in the biggest hall with 3,000 people there. You know, and so we were having to play in a certain way that we would play out to the very last row, and we did it, but a lot of it was lost because people in the back there just couldn't see the interchange between the musicians and the shared jokes and the little things that happen in a smaller environment. And so that was, I'm really interested in how music is evolving now in our time of crisis in this country, because it is. We are in a time of crisis now. But I know I'm diverging, but I'm digressing. But music has the power to heal us. Music is more important now than ever. So we must continue.
Yeah.
I see Michael, my brother-in-law. Michael Wilson Thomas is there.
Well, and it's not a digression. This was the point of sharing you with the flute community, because you are so eloquent and able to really articulate this artistic sense and this idea of, you know, stopping, looking, listening. And every time you've done this in your life, you've created something out of it. And I was so moved by all of these chamber music concerts and ensembles that you've been a part of. And yes, I have a snippet of your farewell performance for the Temple of Dendur. Would you like to see a little bit of that so people could see the room or the space that you were talking about? We'll just play a couple of seconds of it. But I think it said your farewell after 30 years, not 20 years. That's amazing. I mean, you spent so much. Let's see if we can, you know what, I have to share it on here. I gotta get used to this. Okay. As much as I would love to listen to the whole thing, but you could see what a magnificent space that was.
We were playing facing the temple. Originally, we wanted to play on there are two temples there. We wanted to play on the interim space, but all of a sudden, our musicians started to get sick. Somebody fell down, somebody else had a hemorrhage. And we said, well, what's going on here? Why can't we play that? And they said, because the original temple had two brothers buried underneath it, there's probably a curse. So we said, okay, fine. We won't play on the stage. We'll play over there. We can look at the stage. But you know, the tempo that I'm using for that, it's so slow. And I realized we had to do that kind of playing in there because of the echo. If I had played any faster, it would have gotten totally mixed up. So that was a very
Oh, is spectacular. Would you like to talk a little bit more about, and we've talked about you as the producer and the director, but also we touched a little bit on the commissioning work, and you've done a tremendous amount of commissioning. And I think we have a few photos of you. I know Leon Kirchner was has played a major role in your commissioning. Takamitsu, the Lieberman sonatas, Michael Tilson Thomas, you name it. I mean, you have endless both solo repertoire as well as chamber music repertoire. Can you talk to us a little bit about the process of that and working with the composer and that kind of creative experience?
Someone actually advised me to do that when I was just starting off. It was a manager who was at the end of his life, and he said, this is what you should do. Commission some new pieces. Because what are you going to do? You're going to play the Mozart concerto all the time? You know, it's a wonderful piece, but there's the Ibarra and the Nielsen. And he got me thinking, and I think, yeah, because I would like to leave for other people a legacy of pieces from now that will survive into the next century in which we are now. And then after that, it was wonderful to see my colleagues starting to do the same thing. Carol Winsence and Marina Piccinini. These people are Jana Jakowska, who's with us, I think, from Prague, commissioning works that are, and especially now that there's such good music being written, it's really going to be a living legacy from us, which speaks about our time, as the Mozart speaks about his time. Of course, it's an eternal, his music is eternal, but still it comes very much from the epochs in which he lived. So Leon Kirchner, I met when I was 10 years old in Los Angeles. He was playing his own composition at some sort of fundraising for some cause, probably. And so I remember meeting he was a young, handsome composer and being kind of bowled away by him. Little did I know that later, when we moved to Boston and when I was at Marlborough, that I would meet him as a composer and conductor. And then Scott had known him even before that at Tanglewood. And so it was kind of meant to be. Became very close friends. And so when time came to me actually think about approaching the National Endowment for the Arts for a grant to commission a concerto, I just thought he would write the most marvelous piece. I knew he would. He had a hard time writing because he wrote very complex things and he was always looking for, I don't know if any of you have ever read the novel Henderson and the Rain King. Henderson the Rain King. It's about a man who just feels this voice inside of him saying, I want, and he doesn't know what that thing is. And that was so much Leon. He wrote an ill-fated opera based on that novel by Saul Bellow. But the idea of I want, and Leon, I wish I had my little shaker here, but Leon wanted like a sound that you could, like an African, one of the wood chimes, that would evoke something that's beyond us that we can't really understand. So this man was trying to do that all the time when he composed, which meant that he really had a hard time completing a piece. And so I asked him to do this concerto. And actually, if you go to the New England Conservatory website, Hugh Wolf and I did a whole series when we were going to do one of the first premieres of the reconstructed piece, because originally it was written in the 70s, about how it happened, the evolution of the piece. So I won't tell the whole story here now, but you can go and check it out. I think it's called Kirchner Stories. But of course I talked to Michael Chilson Thomas immediately because I said he is the one who's got to do this with me, because he also has this idea of the I want and the thing that's beyond us and reaching for that thing and how to express it. Because Michael's a supreme teacher, so he's also, in addition to his conducting, he's learning how to evoke that and bring it out in students. And it's something that I've always wanted to do too. So here, I think on the screen, you see the last, this is Michael, this is from my first flute part. And Michael's score from those first performances is just a massive marks, because Leon's handwriting was so tiny you could hardly read it. It was maddening, like little chicken scratches. And from those, you were supposed to understand what he was trying to say, But because he would say, yeah, I want you to do this, and Michael and I were trying to figure it out. Michael, you remember the story? We were on the stage rehearsing it, and Leon was in the audience. And Michael just said, let's go and ask him. So we jumped out off the stage. We ran up to Leon. We said, what do you want here? What do you want here? And he looked at the score and he said, I don't know, or something like that. You decide. So look at this ending here. It's the end of this whole piece. First of all, I asked him to write a piece for a huge orchestra, which it was just silly to do that, because that means, 6 hours of rehearsal required, and how many orchestras can do that, blah, blah, blah. I know now it should be just a small ensembles of strings and a couple of winds or something. But here, after we've gone on to this huge landscape, and here we are, and then all of a sudden, the whole orchestra's quiet. And the flute goes, and then the harp plays, then there's this, and the flute goes, And the orchestra goes, shh. The orchestra. That's just a perfect Leon Kirchner moment, because it's just exquisite, you know, and you have to stop, look, and listen. You have to stop everything to go to that place with him. And that's what the interpreters have to do, understand what he was trying to write down, because musical notation is a very imperfect art. It's hard to write exactly. Look at free, in quotation marks. Great, thank you, parentheses. Okay, thank you, cadenza. All right, accelerando, retard, free, and you know, that's what you have to do as an interpreter, is try to figure out what the guy meant by this, or the woman. So anyway, go on.
Oh, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I know that the other kind of sister story to that is your reluctance to play the Boulez piece that had been written for you. And can you tell that story? I mean, because that's amazing to me.
Yeah, no, it wasn't when it was originally written. It was not written for me. It was written in the 40s, and it was written as a bad boy Pierre Boulez. Take that, flute players! You know, think you can play this? Give this a try. And that was in his really bad boy time, and so he was using it's such a fabulous piece. But I was always terrified of it. I had a copy, and I would bring it out, and I would start to play it, and I thought, no, I can't do this. This is not me. I just can't do it. And then I was playing with the great Finnish pianist Paavali Jumppanen, who said to me, he was the one who said, Paula, this was written for you. In other words, flutists. You're a flutist. This is one of the great works of the 20th century. Paavali had played a lot of Boulez music, piano music. He said, we must learn this piece together. You must play this piece. So I said, oh, I must. Okay, I must. All right, Paavali, if you're with me in this. And so he was with me every step of the way, because he was learning it too. So we learned it together. And then I'll never forget when I went out there with him to play the first performance, it was like, and that's what this picture represents, you know. There was the music on the piano, and we were actually walking out there on the stage, and we were supposed to play it, you know. It's just, but the thing about the beginning is that it's fabulous when you have a good pianist. You know, a stupid pianist would just play those notes, and you would be even more terrified than ever. But when Paavali played those notes, it's kind of like, you know, here we go, and the flute, it was just, you had to do it. From what he played, I had to play those notes. And it was just a tremendous experience performing it with him, which we did, and then we decided to record it. And that was, again, mind-bending to record it and try to do the scherzi the way Boulez said to do it, which is this, you know, accelerando here and then cutting back. It's it's a hilarious piece. If you think of it, if you really think of it that way, it's really funny. And as I got to know him later, because I played with the Chamber Music Society, we played a piece of his Explosion Fixe, the first performances in New York, and he handed me the flute part 2 days before the first rehearsal, and it looked like this. And I just went home and I started to cry. Again, I was crying. So I decided to drink a whole glass of scotch, which I did. And then I could start to practice it. But anyway, I'm digressing. But I would say to everybody, try it. Get a colleague, get a buddy to learn the piece with you. If you haven't already played it, probably a lot of you have already played it, because to me it was, you know, it was not played so often when I first learned it, but it's a tremendous experience playing it. It's, especially the end where you just kind of blast off. You just go, 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 go.
Well, speaking of, again, kind of this idea that you've never stopped this trajectory, and even right up to very recently, just I think it was 2 years ago, you learned another piece that you had always put off learning, and it's the Cocopelli by Catherine Hoover. And then you finally decided, I'm going to learn this, and you played it for the New York Flute Club's 100th anniversary gala concert. And so maybe continue to speak to this idea that that desire in you never stops, to keep growing and to keep.
Yeah, that's what's on the screen now is not Cocopelli.
Yeah, no.
That's me saying, I'm not going to play the Boulez. No, that's Pierre Lunaire. That's a speaking part that I took for that. Oh, crazy woman. What do I do?
Oh, we have to address that one though, because that's so fascinating. But what was it like to learn this Cocopelli though, after years of you saying, but now's the time?
Yeah, it was time. And Nancy Toff, God bless her, she said, I really want you to play this. And I took it up and I thought, well, okay, I've heard many performances of this piece. I'm just going to go and take it like I've never heard of anybody play it. I'm just going to look at the score like she just wrote it, as if she just wrote it. Because it's a wonderful piece. And so I did my thing. All right, stop, look and listen. Stop. Stop in the name of love. Stop everything. Take out the music. Try to make, because she had died by that time. So I said, Catherine, okay, you got to be alive with me in the room. You got to help me do this. How am I supposed to play it? Okay, you give your instructions in the part. That's nice. It's good to know about the Hopi and Cocopelli, and I know about that. And I know, we all know flute players. We relate to him so much, or it, or him, he, they, them. And but I was thinking, am I supposed to do this like a Native American flute? Am I supposed to actually try to approximate that sound? But no, because she's inspired by that, but she's writing for the modern flute. And so the modern flute is speaking about that, some of the great reaches and the people passing through the mountains and the wind and the birds. And that's what I, as her interpreter, I am doing, is speaking that language, her language, and that she's evoking Cocopelli. So that's what I did. So sometimes actually the beginning, that's very much the cedar flute. And then, it's kind of like, well, yeah, but I'm talking now. I'm playing the instrument, but I'm talking too. So it was a wonderful fusion sort of thing that happened, because I spent many hours on it alone here in my room. And then once I got out there to play it, I really wanted, it was wonderful. It was in Merkin Concert Hall, which is a wonderful space. There's a lot of space to play into. So when you go out there, you're playing into the space. And so I was thinking of being out there in the desert. Thank goodness I've been there, and I've walked those pathways, and I've seen what it's like to be out there. And so I just tried to evoke that. I don't know how many of you have read a novel by Willa Cather called The Song of the Lark. I actually ask all my students to read this, the ones who speak English well enough to actually be able to understand her language, because Willa Cather, she wrote the Nebraska series, My Antonia and O Pioneers. Some of you maybe know those novels. But The Song of the Lark is not as well known as the others, but it's about the evolution of a young singer in Chicago. She comes from Moonstone, Colorado to Chicago to study music. And, oh my goodness, I forgot that we talked about this, Beth. And Willa Cather was able to write about music in a way that I find it's very rare with novelists and writers. Most people write about string quartets and playing music, but they just miss something. They don't quite get it. But boy, she does. She understands, or she understood when she was writing, what the development of an artist, what it took. And the title is based on this painting, which is in the Chicago Art Institute. And the young Thea Kronberg goes to the museum and sees this painting. And again, it's not a masterpiece. It's a wonderful painting. It's a masterpiece in its way, because it evokes so much. I mean, look at it. She's hearing the song of the lark. She's out about to begin her work in the morning, but she stops. And she looks out into the sky and she's listening. And she's transfixed. She cannot move because this music is taking over her whole self. And that's what happens to this young singer, Thea, who becomes a great Wagnerian soprano. And the descriptions of her learning them, I'm getting chills just thinking about this book. It's such a great book. And it also talks about the music profession and how after her first struggles, her first triumphs, her search to be happy, maybe, although that's not the first thing on her list. It's being an artist, that what consumes her most. the fact that the music profession gets to be less interesting, actually the ins and outs of what it takes to be a successful singer and all the performances and all that. She kind of touches on that at the end, of that it doesn't have the ecstasy and passion of the experience of the search and finding your voice. And so I don't know, that makes me think that if we can stay on the pathway of discovering what it is we have to say our whole lives, no matter how old and rickety we get, or if we're sick, which many of us are, and are dealing with sickness, or, you know, the pandemic and how we were so scared, that we still can keep the key to being surprised. That's it, you know? The capacity to be surprised, no matter how old we are. That's what I think keeps us young, too. That's something Marcel Moïse had. His eyes, he was so old, and his body was like this. But his eyes, you know, you would just see his eyes, and you just couldn't do anything except look into those eyes.
Well, speaking of the art of surprise, as we leap through all of these directions that you go into, the Pierre Lunaire, we saw a quick picture of it a little bit ago. That is quite something. This is Paula without her flute. This is Paula using her voice as an art in the art of, is it Sprechern? Is that
Yeah, I got you. Yeah.
Yes. How did that project come about? I know you had actually played the Pierre Lunaire flute part back in Marlborough, I think.
Marlborough, yeah. How many, I don't know how many of you have ever been in a performance of Pierre Lunaire. It's an extremely complex work. Takes many, many rehearsals, especially if you do it without conductor. If you do it with a conductor, it takes less rehearsals, but it's a really exciting thing if you have a group that does it without a conductor. So you have to really, it's a piece of chamber music. And based on some marvelous poetry, French poetry, which was translated into German, Schoenberg took the text and made a series of...
Oh, sorry. I apologize.
No, that ain't it.
No. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm gonna call it up. I apologize.
So I was quite young when I started to play it. There was a performance at Juilliard, actually, a wonderful group of people, including Edward Steuermann, who played the first performance with Schoenberg, was the pianist. He was quite an old man by that time, but he was in our group, and Jan de Gaetani was the Sprecherin. And so that was my first introduction to it, and I was absolutely blown away by it. I loved learning it. I loved playing it. And then I played it later in Marlborough, and I played it later. Felix Golomer, the violinist, was the leader of the group, and we had a Sprecherin who was okay. You know, she was really trying her best, but they are really phantasmagoric texts, bloody, and sometimes horrifying, and then sometimes so beautiful. And it's all about, again, Pierrot Lunaire, who's searching to come home. He just wants to go back to Bergamo, to his Commedia dell'arte friends, and he has to journey through this nightmarish landscape to get there and encounter all sorts of things. And so she was all right, but Felix was yelling at her to try to get her to Finstere Schwarze Riese. He was yelling at her, and she was sort of trying. And then in Marlborough, I played Mitsuko Uchida was the pianist. Again, the Sprecherin was wonderful, but both Mitsuko and I were yelling at her to just get out of herself and do this. And so I was talking to a group of young musicians. I said, okay, when I'm an old lady, I'm going to collect my money and I'm going to bribe a group of young artists to play the instruments while I do the Sprecherin. And they said, well, what? Let's do it. Let's just do it. I said, what? I said, yes, let's just do it. So we did. And I did an English translation, which we did for the first performances, which I think it's much better in German, so thereafter I would do it in German. And Michael maybe recognized the picture of, because that was a performance at the New World Symphony, amazing musicians there with some lighting and special videos in the back. So it was a great ride. I loved doing it. It was crazy to do it because I'm a flute player. I'm not a singer. You know, people said, well, I tried to learn how to do the singing. Schoenberg asked for certain sung notes, and I learned how to do those. And I went to a vocal coach, and I did the whole, I don't know why I did that. But anyway,
Extraordinary. Do you mind if I share? Oh, Mariana's going to share a couple of the photos from that performance you were talking about, or one of the performances of Pierre Lunaire.
Yeah.
I think we have two.
Yeah,
You can see the expression on your face.
it was
It's
so much fun.
fabulous.
It was such a riot to do it. It was just great to do it, and it's wonderful to get out there without the flute. You know.
May I play just a few seconds of it so people can hear what your voice is like? I'm sorry, I was rudely interrupting there as I was trying to cue it up, but I have the recording of you. Let me just play a little bit of it.
Die weint den Mann mit Augen trinkt, gießt nachts der Mond in Wogen nieder. Und eine Springflut überschwemmt den stillen Horizont. Gelöste Schauen wie Süßte schwimmen ohne Zeit.
Amazing.
That's Soo-Yeon Kim, flutist. I don't know how many of you know.
Oh, in New York, yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. Your voice is perfect for this, but
I'll tell you, it's the words are saying the wine that men drink, den man mit Augen trinkt. You drink with your eyes. The moon pours down every night, you know, and the poet is drunk with this wine of the moonbeams washing down. It's just such amazing poetry. It's great. But you know, we try to do that with our flutes too. Wein den man mit Augen trinkt.
would you like to delve into a different kind of energy and the fun energy and of the Brazilian music that you got into in your life? And actually, we have Paula to thank for so much of this introduction back in the, what was it, in the 80s that you were bringing these into the choro and the Brazilian music to the United States. There really hadn't been much of that 70s and 80s during that time.
Well, it was actually in the 90s. I played a recital. It's a long story, so I'll just be very short. I was playing a classical recital, and we wanted to do as an encore a little Brazilian tune. And my friend Stanley Silverman, the composer, said, listen, I have a friend who's a percussionist, and let's get this music. And then it turns out that Irna Priore, who was a wonderful flutist, was turning pages, and was Brazilian. And it was kind of like everything came together. And she said, you know, Paula, this choro, you should play this music. It's so beautiful. And, you know, wasn't been playing in the United States at all. And so she started bringing me recordings, and then Ciro Baptista, whose wife, they were Brazilian, she started bringing me music, and everyone was flooding me with this material, which actually now is popular again in Brazil, but then it wasn't. It was the MPB, it was the more modern versions of the music, because everyone considered choro to be quite old-fashioned. But now everyone's kind of going back to that, because choro is the combination of Africa and Portugal, because that's where the Africans were brought by the Portuguese to Brazil, West Africans. And then in the United States, the slave traders were Scottish and Irish. So the Africans were brought to the United States, and that's what the blues evolved from that. The form was a combination of, and ragtime was a combination of Scottish, Irish kind of influences and Africa, the gift without price. I mean, the rhythm, the freedom, the improvisation. And so I was just bowled over by this music, and they were great. And the guys I was playing with, they didn't ever play classical music, so they were learning from me, and I was learning from them. And so it was just such a gift. I'm so grateful. It was a great 10 years I was playing with them.
Well, as much as I would love to just hear you speak about it, you sent me an incredible video. Can I show the spontaneous video of you with the trio? Not the trio, the Aeroporto.
Oh, this is with Altamiro Carrillo. I went down,
Yes.
some of you know him. He had a Brazilian flute convention, and I went down and I played with, he was a great master of choro. He's since died. in Rio. And so they said, Paula, play with him. We'll do a concert. So we did a concert, and he had his band. I'm not sure if any of them are still alive now. This fantastic pandero player. So anyway.
Well, the energy of this I have to share because it's so you, but it's so you merging yourself into and absorbing all these different cultures and styles. So I'd love to play it.
Também gravou esse disco brasileiro. Vamos então agora, atenção, bem calmo, Márcio. Outra vez.
Extraordinary.
Oh, gosh. Oh, my heart.
Well, and that joy.
Eu tenho saudade.
Well, it's so clear when you speak about the joy of playing, you know, whether you're doing Pierre Lunaire or some intense Boulez piece or this incredible, just emotional, lovely music and not being afraid to learn so many new things, not being afraid of a certain genre because you're a classically trained flutist. You know, it's
Yeah, if we don't learn, if we don't grow, we slowly die. That's all. You know, we just gotta. And you stay in one place, it's fine. You can just stay in one place. But you know, it's so much more interesting to just keep trying stuff, even if you get in trouble, which I certainly have.
Well, and you are an artist as a teacher, and if there's your experiences now journeying so much into the New England Conservatory and being, you know, the chair there, and I think we have some cute photos of your current studio. If Mariana is able to pull those up, do you have anything to share about teaching and how you teach so naturally? You know, and maybe speaking to that element of the performers that, you know, teaching is such a big part of this interchange.
Well, teaching has always been part of my life. I've tried to pass on what I know. I started when I was pretty young, and I knew a certain amount then, and I just tried to keep passing it on. I felt like the teachers I'd studied with, Baker and Moise, I wanted to pass that on, because Marcel Moise always used to talk about how, when I go to Paradis, when I die, I want to sit at the feet of my teacher, Taffanel. So he would always talk about Taffanel, he would talk about Gobert. So I felt like and Saint-Saëns, he knew all those people. And so I knew Moise, you know, so I felt like he was imbibing, he was endowing me with this. I was imbibing the atmosphere of those who came before him. And he still had the atmosphere of Paris at the turn of the century. He had lived then and knew Debussy and Ravel, you know, so he had that in his DNA, and I hoped that he was kind of passing it on to me. And so I just wanted to pass it on. So I feel like that with this amazing group of people I'm looking at right now who come from all over the place. There's the 4 Koreans in back. They're so adorable. They sort of hang out together. Zoe Kagan, who's got her hands up, who gave the address at Convocation. Boy, if you want to check into that, it's just so beautiful. And Mona Sangaslan, Yamazaki Sangaslan, and Anna, I'm sorry, I'm just looking at all these people, Sammy Watts. I've got like wonderful, she's Hispanic, and so is Javier Castro. Then here's Sasha Hitachi, and she's a mix of Japanese and I don't know what his Kazaya, I'm not sure what her father, where he comes from. And she's a Harvard dual degree person, along with Jessica Shan sitting next to her there. And that's a wonderful program that NEC has for people who want to go to Harvard. It's a 5-year dual degree. You have to get into NEC, and then you pursue a BA at Harvard for 4 years, and then come and get your master's at NEC in the 5th year. And so it's a very strenuous program, but I've graduated several from that now, and they've done very well. If they're able to handle it, they really become very, I don't know, rich people. And Nnamdi Oditahana, whose family comes from Nigeria, Anna Cowelson from Florida, Mara Riley, who's coming from University of Colorado as a voice and flute major. So she's going to be both studying with Lisa Saffer, voice, and flute with me. So that's going to be such a ball. We're going to really have a lot of fun. And I'm interested in people, when I auditioned for the school, I'm interested in people who use their brains, who are intelligent, who oh yeah, that's the motion that I think we've all seen. Any of us who have been in a teaching studio teaching, we all do that. We all do like that. That was taken by Stefan Cohen, my nephew, son of Deborah. I'm not sure if he made it here today. He wanted to come and be with us today. And he's a wonderful photographer. In fact, he took the picture, I think maybe you showed at the Temple of Dendur. And he's been kind of going along with me on the road. He's taken a lot of wonderful pictures with Michael and with the San Francisco Symphony also. A great photographer, able to capture in a moment, moments like that, even when they're fast-moving moments. So I don't know. I just feel like it's a mission. I want to. Yeah, that's at the New World Symphony, and then one of their marvelous practice rooms. I want to. Yeah, that's my dance training coming in there. I want to pass it on. I just want to.
Well, as we're getting near the end and we don't have a hard finish by any means, I don't want to miss the opportunity to round out this extraordinary inspiration of stopping, looking, listening, and forget such a major part of your life, which is your family and your family life. And I know you've spoken about your family of growing up, but also your own family. And there's an adorable clip that you sent to me from the Sunday morning show that shows your daughter, like as a little child, when you were talking about those years of being in Spoleto and beginning the chamber music concerts with your husband, and her being a part of that. I'd love to show a little of that and talking about your family and how you balance all of this all these years and the challenges maybe that came and how you met those challenges over time. Is it okay if I show a little bit of that? Okay. Let's pull this up. It's so cute to see her with you. Oh, you know what? I have to make it big.
One of the main advantages for them is that they can bring their 3-year-old daughter Elizabeth with them for the weeks of the festival.
It's a tremendously hectic kind of schedule here, but it's wonderful because we're in one place, and so we can carry on a normal family life, even though what's normal for us, it's different for other people.
Elizabeth, mush.
Back in New York, where they live most of the year, Paula tries to spend as much time as possible with Elizabeth.
Okay. Would you like to beat the eggs with me?
Yep.
It is like a juggling act or a high wire act. I often think of it as a high wire act, balancing a dishwasher on my head or something like that, doing an arabesque on the high wire.
Yeah, that's what it's like, a high wire act. And I have to say, Elizabeth, who's now chairman of the Department of Psychology at Duquesne University, that little kid who got her University of Chicago, she had a Ph.D. from University of Chicago, and but she was we took her everywhere, and she was a wonderful traveler. Oh yeah, there she is in front of her office. Aww. She's a marvel. She was such a good sport. She was a better traveler than we were. She always loved it. Oh, Dad went under the overpass. She would love it if mistakes happened or if we missed a flight. She would be excited and she'd want to go and play the video games. She just was such a great, she was born in a trunk, you know. She was a real theater kid. And she would be backstage. I have a picture of her dancing. We were rehearsing Appalachian Spring and she was drawing something in the back when she just got up and started to dance. And she was just a participant. That's all I can say. And it was just great. And it was exhausting sometimes because I would travel with her. And that was really, and I didn't have, you know, when I see, like, what's the name of the great, there's some wonderful actors now, women who have families, have children, and you see a picture of them with their kids all around them in an airport, and it's really nice, but what you don't see is the whole staff around her. 7 or 8 people, bodyguards, and, you know, people to carry the luggage. And I never had that. I was carrying the luggage in one hand, and she was in, I had to carry, oh my gosh, I don't know how I did it, but we did it together. And Scott, when we went on tour with the Orpheus Trio, we would have to leave her in New York, and that was, we finally finished with the Orpheus Trio, because we all had kids, and we just said, no. This is not working, and I didn't want to miss a minute of her development when she took her first step or did the first this or that. I didn't want to miss it, so I cut back. It's like, I think mothers, and I'm just going to be very frank about this, I think we just take knives to ourselves and we cut off big parts of ourselves, our bodies, our psyche. I always thought, like, that's why they call the garment thing the rag trade, because women go shopping for dresses like when we to sop up the blood from when we've cut ourselves. I know that's a really kind of a dramatic way of putting it, but I think we do that. We really do. We cannot let ourselves go and just say me, 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 because it's all about us, and so that's what we have to do. It was easier for me because I've always been about us anyway. And because she was just such a marvelous child. I did want to have a big family, but it didn't work out that way. It was just wonderful Elizabeth, and there's Scott. And we just had a great time together. And now she's grown up, and now I miss her. I miss the good times we had together. We had a lot of laughs. She was a wonderful little artist. I have her pictures all over the place. I still find them in my flute case. I find her drawings, and my sister Deborah always put little red hearts in everything. So I'm always finding your little red hearts, Deborah, because I always kept them. And and I had a little thing that I always used to carry with me when I would go away, and it was a little thing of a little dinosaur going like this. So I would always look at that before I would go on stage.
Oh, that's so wonderful. It's so wonderful to hear that you were able to have this full family. There's a few fun shots that we can have rolling here of you celebrating your 75th birthday. 5 years ago with Stephen Colbert on his show. You were quite the hit back then. I don't think anyone could possibly believe that you are the age that you are now, which you're very gracious about telling me, which nobody would ever believe. But I cannot thank you enough, though, for sharing this spirit that you have, this stepping stones that you're always providing. I will say we did have one question that I saw pop in, because it caught my eye just because I know people have asked me this before. Somebody was interested in finding about your relationship with Paul Robison.
Thank you for asking, whoever it was. He was my godfather. When we moved to Nashville, Tennessee, and my father was teaching at Fisk University, Paul Robison was very active there and in part of the Fisk Jubilee Singers, who would go all over the world singing. And my parents always looked up to him, and they thought, well, if we have a boy, we want to name him Paul. And then they were named after Paul Robison. But then they had a little girl, and they said, okay, let's name her Paula, and let's ask him to be your godfather. And so they did, and he was my godfather. And I feel like something of his spirit was transmitted to me. Not only was he a great artist, amazing singer and actor, but he was an activist at a time when it was very, very difficult for him. He stood up for African Americans at a time when no one else was doing it really, or people were trying to do it, but they didn't have the stature that he did. And so he was able to take himself and put himself on the line, standing up for human rights. And he got in a lot of trouble, and he wasn't able to travel for a while. His passport was blocked. He was really persecuted. And he made mistakes too. He just wasn't wise always, but he jumped in because of love for his fellow human beings. And so I guess I took that as an example too. He was such a great man. And if you want, he's on YouTube. You can go see him singing to the Welsh miners. Go and look at him, a tall man, and the Welsh miners are all around him, and he's singing to them. And there was a song that his singing of Deep River was something that was always very inspiring to me because I heard it as a small child. And so that's been a piece that I've kind of been playing a lot recently. Has my own interpretation of what it means to me at this point. And it meant a lot because we know now that these were all the spirituals were not only spiritual exercises or expressions, but they were also means to escape, and they were like Deep River. It was a signal to cross the Deep River because so people could be able to escape from slavery. So anyway, it has a kaleidoscopic meaning for me, and as the memory of him does. But really, check him out with those Welsh miners. It's really quite extraordinary. And also, he as an actor, Othello. I think there's a scene from Othello when he was on Broadway with that on YouTube. YouTube is such a great source, isn't it? Resource.
It is, and I was going to remind everyone, or just suggest to everyone, that all of these videos and things, you have an extraordinary website yourself. Whoever helps you keep that going, but you have the flutings that you did back in 2013 with Adam Workman, and some of the creative things you did with Adam Workman. He so extraordinary, and we can be grateful for those because they're short segments of teaching, just listening to you speak and listening to you teach out in your garden. And they're magnificent. And I really suggest everyone to get to know your website and then just to explore YouTube, because it is an extraordinary wealth that we can find these snippets of history. But I can't thank you enough, again, for not just, every once in a while we're lucky enough to encounter someone in our lives and encounter human beings that just simply resonate with an energy that's so natural and so powerful and even very intricate and delicate at times. And I that's how I feel about you. I never had the pleasure of studying with you or being in the same areas as you, but I often had all of your recordings. So to be able to get to know you and to see this and feel this energy, even coming through this electronic screen, we've never been together in person, but to share that with the Chicago Flute Club audience and flutists of all generations really need to know the many. You just said the word kaleidoscopic, and that's how I think of you. You have so many dimensions and so much that changes, but it all blends and works so beautifully together. So light. Do you have any final thoughts that you would like to share? And we could open it up to if there's some questions that people want to throw in the chat line. I know we're at 3:42, so we've gone over. But if you have any final thoughts about this, continuing this lovely theme today.
I would just like to thank you, because I think you have to mute now, Beth.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Thanks. I want to thank you because this invitation, I couldn't do it last year. We were trying for last year. Finally, I thought maybe I would be able to do it now. Life is a journey, and I've had some rocky roads recently. And I have to say that your questions and all of your support and enthusiasm has given me a new strength today. And I feel I can go on for whatever awaits me now with a feeling of that you've helped me to sum up and remember some of the things that I've done in my life and to rejoice in them, things I'd forgotten about even, and seeing those videos, it was just really a gift to me. So I'm grateful, very grateful. So I thank you.
Well, we are truly grateful for you. And as Charles, I loved his quote, is something about thanking the gods or for Pan for making Paula possible. It was a great alliterative quote, but Thank you, and thank you for your family joining us today, and for their role in making Paula possible, and whatever you've done in their lives. And we look forward to much more from you. You're still continuing, and you're still continuing to grow. So thank you for the gifts that you've given to all of us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And everyone, go visit our website. There's all the information about our upcoming festival and our upcoming events. So it's all on there. You don't need any details today. But again, we applaud you, Paula. I wish you could hear applause now. But
we should ask people to unmute on.
Oh, we can. Everyone can unmute because, and actually, maybe it would be good to go on gallery view, Mariana, and maybe we'll get a photo with Paula. We'll try to go on gallery view, and we'll. I'll give a countdown on my end at least, and so if you can unvideo so we see faces.
Yeah, Yana, come on, Yana. I want to see your face all the way from Prague.
Yeah, we love faces.
There you are.
Oh, there she is.
This is our version of a standing ovation on Zoom, right?
Exactly. Okay, I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, and we'll take a picture so everybody smile. Hideko, where did you go? Oh, there you are. All right. 1, 2, 3. All right. I think I got a couple.
Okay.
And how about now? A standing
ovation.
Brava! Brava!
Thank you. Have a wonderful evening, everyone. Enjoy your Sunday. Paula, blessings to you and to all that you encounter coming up. And we hope to see you. We hope to see you in Chicago next year for the National Convention.
Oh, that would be nice. Oh, is the convention in Chicago? Oh,
yes,
wow.
And it's the 50th anniversary, so it's going to be in Chicago.
Okay.
So fingers crossed.
I'll try.
Okay.
Blessings to all of you. God be with you. Blessings to you. Mwah!
Thank you. Thank you.
Much love.
Thank you, everyone, for coming today. We'll see you at the next one.